My name is Margaret, and I'm 62 years old. My son David was my pride and joy. But when his fancy car broke down 100 miles from home, he called me to drive him another, then left me on the side of the road like a dog. He was so sure he'd get away with it. But what David didn't know was that I had just given a ride to a complete stranger. What happened next changed his life and career forever. You won't believe how one small act of kindness turned everything upside down. Stay tuned to find out how my son lost it all because he underestimated his own mother. They say a good deed has its own reward, but sometimes a good deed is just a prelude to a special kind of hell. I'm Margaret, 62 years young, and I learned that lesson the hard way. It was a Saturday morning, bright and early, the kind of day that promises nothing but good things. I had a full pot of coffee, my favorite oldies station was playing, and I was planning to spend the day in my garden. That's my sanctuary. It's where I go to find peace. I was out there on my knees in the dirt, feeling the cool earth in my hands when my cell phone rang. It was my son, David. David is my pride and joy, or at least he used to be. The apple of my eye, my little boy who is now a man, a lawyer, with a beautiful wife, a fancy house, and a life that seemed a million miles away from the simple one I lived. I don't see him as much as I'd like, but I always hold out hope. "Mom, I need your help," he said, his voice clipped and urgent. "It's about the car." He explained that his car had broken down about 100 miles from my house on the way to a charity gala he and his wife Sarah were supposed to attend. A prestigious event, he called it. He needed me to drive his spare car to him and bring him back home. He made it sound like a life or death situation, and like the fool I am, I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. "Of course, honey," I said, not even hesitating. "You know I'll do anything for you." My garden could wait. My peace could wait. My son needed me. I didn't even stop to think about how he was supposed to be a brilliant lawyer who could surely call a tow truck or an Uber or even one of his high-powered friends. No, the moment he asked for my help, I jumped. That's what mothers do, isn't it? We put our children first, even when they've long since stopped putting us anywhere near their priority list. So I put on my best dress, because you don't show up to a gala in gardening clothes, even if you are just a driver, grabbed the spare keys, and got into my old Ford Escape. It's not much, but it gets me where I need to go. I figured I would just drop off his car and come right back. A small detour on an otherwise perfect Saturday. But oh, how I was wrong. So wrong. The drive was uneventful for the most part. The sun was shining, I had a thermos full of iced tea, and I was listening to some of my favorite tunes. I was happy just thinking about seeing my son. I imagined him smiling, thanking me, maybe even giving me a hug. It had been a while since we had a real, heartfelt hug. But that's a story for another time. I finally spotted him on the side of the highway, standing next to a sleek silver sedan that looked more like a spaceship than a car. David and Sarah were standing there, their designer clothes looking far too glamorous for the dusty side of the road. As I pulled up, they didn't even smile. They just looked stressed and annoyed. "It's about time, Mom," David said, not a hint of gratitude in his voice. "I got here as fast as I could," I said, my heart sinking a little. "Is everything okay?" "Fine, just get in," Sarah said, not even looking at me. "We're going to be late." She didn't say, "Thank you," or "It's so good to see you." She just acted like I was a chauffeur I'd hired for a pittance. That's the thing about Sarah. She has an aura of entitlement that's thick enough to cut with a butter knife. I've always tried to be nice to her, to be a good mother-in-law. I brought her a little knitted scarf last Christmas, and she looked at it like it was a used dish rag. I'm not exactly her biggest fan, and the feeling is mutual, I can assure you. But I tried to ignore it. This was for David, and that's all that mattered to me. As we started driving back, a heavy silence fell on the car. I tried to make small talk, but they just grunted in response. David was on his phone, and Sarah was scrolling through her social media, meticulously avoiding eye contact with me in the rearview mirror. It was just a few more miles to the exit that would take them to the gala, but those miles felt like an eternity. Finally, we pulled up to a magnificent building, all glass and steel, with a dozen expensive cars lining the entrance. David got out and Sarah followed, both of them practically running away from me in my car. "Are you sure you don't need a ride home, honey?" I asked, my heart a little too hopeful. "No, Mom, we'll be fine," he said, already walking away. "We can just get a cab or something later. Thanks for the car, though." And that was it. No hug, no I love you, no real gratitude. Just a quick thanks for the car, as if I were a hired hand. They disappeared inside the building, leaving me sitting in the car with my heart aching. But the real betrayal was to come. A few moments later, I got a text from David, a simple, cold message. "Mom, we won't need a ride back tonight. We decided to stay at a hotel downtown. You can just head home. Thanks again." Just like that. No call me, no be safe, just a dismissal. He used me for a ride and then tossed me aside when he was done. My heart felt like it was breaking into a million tiny pieces. I felt a stinging in my eyes and a single tear rolled down my cheek. I had to get out of there. I had to get away from the sight of that magnificent building where my son was mingling with the rich and famous, while I was left feeling so small, so insignificant. I started the engine and began driving back, the tears now flowing freely. The road seemed to blur in front of me. I pulled over to the side, my body shaking with a mix of anger and sorrow. That's when I saw her, a young woman, maybe 20, standing on the side of the road, looking lost and scared. She had a small backpack and was holding a tattered cardboard sign that simply read, "Anywhere." My first instinct was to drive away, to focus on my own pain. But I just couldn't stop. I had to stop. I'm a mother, and something inside me told me that this young woman needed help. What kind of person would I be if I didn't help a soul in need, even as my own was breaking? "Hey, honey," I said, rolling down my window. "You need a ride?" She looked surprised, almost as if she couldn't believe anyone would stop. "You're not going to try to sell me anything, are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No, honey. I'm just a woman who's had a really bad day. Get in. Where are you headed?" She got into the car, and the door closed with a satisfying thud. The car was quiet for a moment, and then she spoke again. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "I did. I'm in the business of helping people who are in a pickle, like me right now. This is a crazy world we live in, and sometimes it's all you can do, isn't it? Just try to be kind to each other." I knew right then and there that this young woman was a gift, a sign that even in my darkest moments, there was still light in the world. I don't know who she was or where she was going, but I had a feeling that this chance encounter was going to be more than just a coincidence. It was a twist of fate, and it was a sign that my journey was just beginning. It's hard to imagine with my heart so full of pain and betrayal that things could get any worse. But believe me, they did. If you want to know what happened next, stick around. You won't want to miss the shocking turn of events that changed my life forever.
It's amazing how quickly a perfect day can turn into a personal tragedy, and how a moment of kindness can lead to an even bigger mess. After my son David dismissed me at the charity gala, my car felt like a coffin on wheels, suffocating me with the bitter sting of his betrayal. The drive back was a blur of angry tears and disbelief. How could the boy I raised, the one I poured every ounce of my love into, treat me like a piece of luggage? He had used me, plain and simple, and then he'd thrown me aside the moment he no longer needed me. The pain was a physical thing, a cold, heavy weight in my chest. I pulled over to the side of the road, the world outside a smear of colors through my tear-filled eyes, and that's when I saw her. A young woman, maybe 20 years old, with a small backpack and a tattered sign that read, "Anywhere." Every instinct I had screamed at me to keep driving, to focus on my own pain, on the gaping hole in my heart, but the woman I am, the mother I've always been, wouldn't let me. I rolled down my window, the cool air a stark contrast to the heat of my shame. "Hey, honey," I said, my voice cracking a little. "You need a ride?" She looked at me like I was a mirage, a trick of the light. Her eyes, filled with a weariness that was far too old for her young face, searched mine for a moment. Then, with a hesitant nod, she opened the passenger door and slid in. The silence was thick, filled with the unspoken histories of two women who had been let down by the world. I drove for a while, the miles ticking by, and finally she broke the quiet. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You didn't have to stop." "Yes, I did," I said, the words surprising even me. "I'm in the business of helping people who are in a pickle, like me right now. It's a crazy world we live in, and sometimes all you can do is try to be kind to each other." I introduced myself as Margaret, and she said her name was Ashley. She told me a little bit of her story. A dead-end job in a town where she didn't belong, a car that had finally given up the ghost, and a boyfriend who had run off with her savings. It wasn't a sob story. It was just a story, told with a resigned weariness that I instantly recognized. It was the weariness of a person who had learned that life wasn't a fairy tale, and that sometimes all you had was yourself. We drove for a few hours, the conversation flowing between us, and as the sun began to set, I realized something profound. This girl, this complete stranger, was more of a comfort to me in a few hours than my own son had been in months. She listened, she laughed, and she didn't treat me like a disposable convenience. The irony of it all was a bitter pill to swallow. My son, my own flesh and blood, had left me on the side of the road, but I had just picked up a stranger who was treating me with more respect and humanity than he ever had. As we were about to enter a small town, she pointed to a run-down motel on the side of the road. She said, "I can get out here," pulling some crumpled bills from her pocket. "This is more than enough. Thank you so much, ma'am." "Nonsense," I said, putting a hand on her arm. "You're not staying in some dump. You're coming with me. My house is just a little ways away. You can have a hot shower and a warm meal, and we can figure things out in the morning." She looked at me like I was a mirage, a trick of the light. Her eyes, filled with a weariness that was far too old for her young face, searched mine for a moment. Then, with a hesitant nod, she opened the passenger door and slid in. We drove the rest of the way to my house in a comfortable silence. My home, a modest 2-story with a porch swing and a garden filled with the roses I had planned to tend to that morning, felt like a haven. It was a place where love was supposed to live, a place where a mother should be safe. I showed Ashley to the guest room, and she collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. I went to the kitchen and made us some dinner, a simple meal of chicken and vegetables. We ate in silence, and for the first time all day, I felt a sense of peace. That night, as I lay in bed, the day's events replayed in my mind. David's cold dismissal, the loneliness of the drive, the unexpected kindness of a stranger. My heart was still a bruised mess, but for the first time since that phone call, it wasn't broken. It was just a little battered, a little tired. I closed my eyes and let out a long, shuddering sigh. I didn't know then, but my life, the life I had built on a foundation of unconditional love and sacrifice, was about to be turned upside down. And the shocking part? I was about to find out that a complete stranger, a girl I had just met on the side of the road, was about to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I bet you think you know what happens next. You don't. The story I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about family, betrayal, and the kindness of strangers.
They say misery loves company, and if that's true, then I was about to get a whole lot of it. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making pancakes when my phone rang. It was David. My heart jumped a little, and I immediately thought, he's calling to apologize. He's realized what he did was wrong. How naive I was. I answered the phone, my voice a little too cheerful. "Mom?" he said. His voice as cold as a January wind. "I'm calling about the car. Sarah and I need it. We're going on a trip." My mouth went dry. "But you said you didn't need it. I have another car, David. You can take that one. I just want to talk to you." "No, Mom," he said, his impatience evident. "I need my car. I told you that. I'm going to be there in an hour. Have the keys ready." And he hung up. Just like that. No hello, no how are you, just a demand and a dial tone. The pancake I was holding fell from my hand and landed on the floor with a splat. My hand started to shake. I was not just a chauffeur. I was a glorified servant. He didn't care about my feelings or my needs. He only cared about his own. I called him back, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "David, what is wrong with you?" I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "You used me yesterday, and now you're demanding things again. What happened to you? The boy I raised would never—" "Mom, don't be so dramatic," he interrupted, his voice laced with annoyance. "It's just a car. I'll get it from you, and then we can have lunch sometime." "Sometime?" "David, you just used me and my car, you dropped me, and you're treating me like a hired hand." "Just have the keys ready, Mom." "No, David, I'm not going to just hand over the keys. I want to know what's going on. Why are you treating me this way?" "Fine, Mom," he said, his voice now a venomous hiss. "If you want to play games, we can play games. I'll be there in an hour, and you better have my car ready, or I'll call the police. That's my car, and you're not going to stop me from getting it back." He hung up, and I stood there, phone in hand, my mind reeling. My son, my own flesh and blood, was threatening to call the police on me. It was so unbelievable, so shocking, that for a moment I just stood there, paralyzed. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and my knees felt weak. Ashley, who had been watching the whole thing, came over and put her arm around me. "Are you okay, ma'am? That was awful." "No, I'm not okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My own son just threatened to call the police on me. He wants his car, and he's not taking no for an answer." Ashley's face hardened. "Well, what are you going to do?" I looked at her, then at the car keys on the counter. "I don't know," I said, my voice filled with a profound sense of helplessness. "I really don't know. It's hard to imagine that things could get any worse, but believe me, they did. What happened next changed everything." I stood in my driveway, the engine of the car running, the keys still warm in my hand. David was there, his face a mask of cold fury, and a hulking tow truck was parked behind him, its crane a sinister metal arm poised to steal my freedom. Ashley, my new friend and an unlikely beacon of reason, was in the passenger seat, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and quiet resolve. The air was thick with tension, a suffocating blanket of betrayal and entitlement. David looked at me as if I were a stranger, a stubborn inconvenience he had to deal with before he could get on with his fabulous life. "Mom, are you really doing this?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I'm going to be late. Just give me the keys." "You are not getting these keys, David," I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of fury. "And you are not taking my car. This is my home, and you are not welcome here." He laughed, a short, ugly sound that made my blood run cold. "Your home? Mom, I'm a lawyer. I know how this works. I have the title. This car is legally mine. You can call the police all you want, but they're going to side with me." I looked at the tow truck driver, a hulking man with a thick beard and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He wouldn't meet my gaze, but I could see the sympathy in his expression. He was just doing his job, but I knew, in that moment, that he saw the injustice of it all. He saw a cold, entitled man trying to bully his aging mother. "David, this isn't about the car anymore," I said, the words coming from a place of deep hurt. "This is about how you treat people, how you treat me. You used me, you dismissed me, and now you're trying to steal my car. I raised you to be a good man, not a monster." His face went hard, and his eyes that used to be filled with love and warmth, were now as cold and empty as a winter sky. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Mom," he said, his voice a low growl. "I'm a grown man. I don't need your permission for anything, and I don't need your lectures. Just hand over the keys and get out of my way." That was it. The final blow. The last shred of hope I had for my son to have a shred of decency was gone. He was a stranger, a cold, heartless stranger. But what he didn't know was that he wasn't just dealing with an old woman anymore. He was dealing with a woman who had nothing left to lose. I took a deep breath and looked at Ashley. She just gave me a small, encouraging smile. It was all the strength I needed. I pulled the keys out of the ignition and held them up. David's eyes lit up, a glimmer of triumph in their cold depths. "Now that's better," he said, holding out his hand. "You can have the keys, David," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "But you can't have the car. Because this car, it's not the one you came in. The one you came in, that one's 100 miles away, broken down on the side of the road. This one is mine. It's my car. And you're not getting it." His face went pale. The smirk vanished, replaced with a look of pure shock and confusion. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "This is my car. You drove it here." "No, honey," I said, a genuine smile now spreading across my face. "I drove my car, my Ford Escape. Your sleek, fancy silver car is still exactly where you left it. And I'm not going to tell you where. You see, I might be old, but I'm not stupid." The tow truck driver, who had been listening in silence, let out a low whistle. David's smugness evaporated, replaced with a frantic panic. "This is a joke, right?" he said, his voice cracking. "You're kidding me." "I'm not," I said, the victory taste sweet on my tongue. "You used me, David. You treated me like a taxi service, and I decided to get a little payback. Now, if you'll excuse me, my friend and I have some errands to run. You can find your own way to the airport." I got back in my car, and as I started to pull away, I could see David yelling, screaming at the tow truck driver, who just shrugged his shoulders, a slight smile on his face. David was fuming, his perfect, carefully planned life unraveling right in front of him. He was furious, and I was free. I was no longer his puppet. I was no longer his doormat. I was Margaret, a woman who had just had the last laugh. But what David didn't know was that I wasn't alone in this. He didn't know who I picked up on the side of the road, and he didn't know that my new companion was about to reveal a shocking secret that would turn his entire world upside down. This is the moment when the tables turn and the real game begins. What my son didn't know would cost him everything. Get ready, because the biggest twist of all is about to unfold.
The look on David's face was worth more than his fancy car. The smug superiority he wore like a second skin melted away, replaced by a frantic, wide-eyed panic. He started sputtering, his expensive shoes kicking up dust in my pristine driveway as he gestured wildly at the tow truck driver. "What are you doing? I told you to take it. That's my car," he yelled. The tow truck driver, a man of few words and apparently a sharp eye for a good story, just shrugged. "Lady said it's her car," he said, his voice a low rumble, "and she's got the keys. Can't tow a vehicle without the owner's permission." "But I'm the owner. I have the title," David shrieked, his face turning a blotchy red. I rolled down my window just enough to be heard. "That's a bold claim, David, and it's true that you have a title, but this car, the one you're pointing at, has a different title, a title that's been in my name for 10 years. You see, the car you so desperately need for your little gala trip, that's the one you left 100 miles away, the one that's still sitting on the side of the road, I would imagine." I let the words hang in the air, each one a hammer blow to his ego. It was a beautiful thing to watch. All the years of him treating me like I was a simpleton, a relic from a bygone era, were finally being paid back with interest. He looked at me, his mouth agape, a series of panicked thoughts clearly racing through his mind. You switched the cars?" he stammered, his voice filled with a profound disbelief. "I didn't switch anything, David," I said, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across my face. "You just assumed. You saw my Ford Escape, and you didn't even stop to think that maybe I have more than one car, or that maybe, just maybe, I'm not as dumb as you think I am." His eyes darted from me to the tow truck driver, then back to me, a cold fury now replacing the panic. "You'll regret this, Mom," he hissed, his voice low and menacing. "I'll make sure you regret this." I just laughed, a genuine, full-throated laugh that felt like a release of all the pain and hurt he had caused. "Honey, I've lived for 62 years. I've seen things you couldn't even imagine. A threat from you? That's just a mild inconvenience. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some shopping to do. And you, well, you have a long walk ahead of you. Or you could call a cab. I'm sure one of your fancy friends would be happy to lend you a hand." With that, I put the car in reverse, waved a hand to the tow truck driver, and drove away, leaving David standing in the middle of my driveway, a monument to his own hubris. Ashley, who had been silent for the entire exchange, finally let out a long, slow breath. "That was incredible," she said, her voice filled with a genuine admiration. "I've never seen anyone stand up to a bully like that before. You were amazing, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am," I said, a playful smile on my lips. "Call me Margaret. And I've had enough of being bullied for one lifetime. It's time someone put him in his place." We drove in a comfortable silence for a while, the tension from the last few hours slowly dissipating. The sun was shining, the radio was playing a jaunty tune, and I felt a sense of victory I hadn't felt in a long, long time. This wasn't just about a car. This was about me. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and my power. David had tried to take it all away, but he had failed. He had underestimated me, and that was the biggest mistake he would ever make. We drove for a while, and as we were passing through a picturesque little town, I saw a large building with a sign that read Seniors Community Center. An idea, a crazy, wonderful idea, popped into my head. "Ashley, I have a proposition for you," I said with a mischievous glint in my eye. "How would you like to help an old lady get a little more visible?" She looked at me, a curious smile on her face. "What do you have in mind?" "Well," I said, pulling into the parking lot, My son and his little wife seem to think that because I'm over 60, I'm invisible, that my opinions don't matter, that my life is over. I'm thinking it's time to change that. I'm thinking it's time to show them that old age doesn't mean you're a doormat. It means you have a lifetime of experience and a whole lot of friends who have your back. Ashley's eyes lit up. "I'm in," she said, her voice filled with a new excitement. "What's the plan?" I knew right then that this was a turning point. I had a new companion, a new purpose, and a new sense of hope. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning. I was no longer a victim. I was a force to be reckoned with. What David didn't know was that by leaving me on the side of the road, he had given me the one thing he could never take away, a chance to start over, and I wasn't going to waste it.
The Senior Community Center was buzzing with activity. A group of women was practicing yoga in one corner, their graceful movements a testament to the fact that age is just a number. In another, a group of men was playing a spirited game of chess, their faces a study in concentration. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of belonging. Ashley and I sat on a bench, a half-eaten bag of potato chips between us, and I laid out my plan. "The way I see it," I began, my voice low and conspiratorial. "David and Sarah think they're untouchable. They think their money and their connections give them a free pass to treat people like garbage. They're wrong, and I'm going to prove it." "How?" Ashley asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "The old-fashioned way," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face, "with a little help from my friends. I've been a part of this community for 30 years. I've volunteered for every bake sale, every fundraiser, every event. These people, they're my family. And they've seen the way David has treated me. They've seen the way he's been so distant, so cold. They know." "So you're going to, what, get them to boycott his law firm?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Better," I said. "We're going to fight fire with fire. We're going to use their own game against them. We're going to go public." Ashley's jaw dropped. "Go public? What do you mean?" "I mean, we're going to tell my story, the story of a mother who gave everything to her son only to be left on the side of the road like a stray dog. The story of a man who used his own mother and then threatened to call the police on her. And we're going to do it in a way that he can't ignore." I explained my idea, a video, a simple, raw, emotional video. I would sit in my garden with my flowers and my peaceful sanctuary in the background, and I would tell my story straight from the heart. I would talk about the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, and I would ask for help. Not money, not sympathy, just a voice. I would ask the viewers to share my story to make sure it reached every corner of the internet. I was going to turn my humiliation into a weapon, and my community was going to be my army. "It's risky," Ashley said, her face a mask of concern. "What if he sues you?" "He's a lawyer," I said with a scoff. "He can try, but you know what they say. The truth is a powerful defense. And everything I'm going to say is the absolute, painful truth. Besides," I added, a smirk on my face, "I'm not doing it alone. I have you, and I have the entire Senior Community Center. We're going to be a force to be reckoned with. We're going to show him that old age doesn't mean you're invisible. It means you're a force of nature." Ashley's face broke into a wide, genuine smile. "I'm in," she said again. "Let's do this, Margaret." We spent the next few days preparing. Ashley, a whiz with technology despite her young age, helped me set up a small camera. We wrote a script, but I threw it away. The best stories are the ones that come from the heart. I sat in my garden, the sun warm on my face, and I started to talk. I talked about my son's birth, the joy I felt holding him for the first time. I talked about all the sacrifices I made, all the jobs I worked to put him through college and law school. I talked about the day of the charity gala and the way he dismissed me like I was a taxi driver. And I talked about the tow truck and the way he threatened to call the police on me. I didn't hold back. I let all the pain and the anger and the betrayal pour out of me. When I was done, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. But I also felt a sense of freedom. The burden of my silence, of my humiliation, was finally lifted. Ashley, who had been sitting behind the camera the whole time, had tears in her eyes. That was beautiful, Margaret. It was real, and people are going to see that. They're going to feel it. We uploaded the video to a new social media channel we had created, and within an hour, the views started climbing. Within 2 hours, the comments started pouring in. People from all over the country, people who had been through similar situations, people who had been betrayed by their own children were sharing their stories. My personal tragedy had become a shared experience. My humiliation had become a source of strength for others. It was a powerful thing to witness. But the real show was yet to come. David, completely oblivious to what was happening, was still trying to find a way to get his car back. He had no idea that a little video, a simple act of defiance, was about to change his life forever. He was about to find out that a mother's love, once spurned, could be the most dangerous force on earth. He had no idea what was coming. The moment he discovered the video, his entire world would come crashing down. What happened next? You'll have to wait and see.
The little video we posted was like a digital wildfire. Within hours, it had spread far beyond my small town. My phone, which had been silent for so long, was now a constant source of buzzing and notifications. People were sharing the video, commenting on it, and sending me messages of support from all over the country. My story, a story of a mother's betrayal, had resonated with so many people who had been through similar situations. They were sharing their own tales of ungrateful children, cold in-laws, and the quiet loneliness that comes with being an older woman in a world that seems to forget you exist. It was both heartbreaking and incredibly empowering. David, of course, was completely oblivious. He was still fuming about the car, probably calling every tow truck company in a 100-mile radius to find out where his precious vehicle was. He had no idea that a far greater catastrophe was brewing. Ashley and I spent the rest of the day reading the comments, and it was a strange mix of emotions. There was so much pain, so much anger, but there was also a shared sense of community, a feeling of, I'm not alone. I realized that this wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a fight for all the forgotten mothers, for all the parents who had been cast aside. The next morning, the first sign of trouble for David appeared. A news crew from a local station showed up at my house. They had seen the video and they wanted to do a story. I was a little nervous, but Ashley, my brave little warrior, was all for it. "This is it, Margaret," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "This is your chance to tell your story to the world, to show them the truth." I agreed. I had nothing to hide, and I was tired of being quiet. I sat on my porch swing, the camera crew setting up their equipment, and I told my story again. I told them about David, about Sarah, about the car, about the tow truck. I was honest, raw, and vulnerable. I didn't try to make myself look like a saint. I just told the truth. The story aired that night, and the reaction was immediate and explosive. My small, personal video was now a national news story. David's name, his law firm, and his wife's social media accounts were all over the internet. People were leaving comments, sending him emails, and calling his office. They were sharing my story and their own, and the wave of public opinion was a powerful, unstoppable force. I had unleashed a storm, and my son, the brilliant lawyer who thought he was untouchable, was right in the middle of it. The phone rang again, and this time I knew it was him. I took a deep breath and answered.
Hello, David, I said, my voice steady and calm. David, what is this? What have you done? He screamed, his voice a high-pitched shriek of panic and fury. My office is getting 1,000 calls a minute. People are leaving horrible messages. Sarah's been crying all day. This is crazy. Take the video down, now. No, David, I said, a cold resolve settling in my heart. I won't. I told my story. The truth is a powerful thing, isn't it? You should know that. You're a lawyer. This is a smear campaign. You have no right to do this. I'm going to sue you for defamation, he yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. I laughed. Defamation? David, I didn't lie about anything. You left me on the side of the road. You treated me like a hired hand. You threatened to call the police on me. I didn't make any of that up. That's all you. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost picture him, his face pale with a dawning horror, realizing that he had completely lost control. He had always been the one in power, the one who held all the cards. But now the power had shifted. It was in my hands, and I wasn't going to let go. Please, Mom, he said, his voice now a pathetic whisper. Please take it down. My life is over. My career is ruined. Sarah's family is going to disown her. You have to help us. Help you? I said, the words a bitter taste in my mouth. You're asking me for help? The woman you left on the side of the road? The woman you treated with such contempt and cruelty? No, David, I can't help you. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. I hung up the phone and looked at Ashley. She just gave me a small, knowing smile. The game had just changed. It wasn't about a car or a single act of betrayal. It was about justice. It was about showing the world that even the most powerful and entitled people can't get away with treating others like they don't matter. The next move was mine, and it was going to be a doozy. What my son didn't know was that I had one more surprise up my sleeve, a secret that would make him realize that he hadn't just angered his mother, he had made an enemy out of a very powerful friend. The next few days were a blur of media interviews, sympathetic phone calls, and an overwhelming sense of support from people I had never met. The internet was on my side, and the comments were getting more and more heated. People were not just condemning David, they were condemning a whole generation of entitled, ungrateful children who were taking advantage of their parents. My story had become a symbol, a battle cry for all the mothers who had been silenced. David and Sarah, once the golden couple, were now social pariahs. His law firm, in a desperate attempt to save face, had put him on administrative leave. Sarah's social media accounts were taken down, and her once perfect life was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. But the real turning point was yet to come. I was at the Senior Community Center having a lovely lunch with my friends when a tall, distinguished-looking man walked up to my table. He had a kind face, a shock of white hair, and a presence that commanded attention. "Margaret?" he asked, his voice a low, gentle rumble. "I'm Robert Peterson. I saw your video. My son and I would like to help." I looked at him confused. "Help with what, sir?" I asked. "With your situation," he said, a knowing look in his eyes. "You see, my son, he's the CEO of a very large and very influential media company. He saw your video and he was very moved. He wants to help you tell your story, and he wants to make sure that the people who hurt you, well, they get what's coming to them." I was speechless. A CEO of a media company? How was that even possible? I looked at Ashley, who was sitting next to me with her mouth agape. She just shrugged, a look of pure shock on her face. "I don't understand," I said. "Why would he want to help me?" Mr. Peterson smiled. "Because you helped me," he said. "Do you remember the day you gave me a ride a few months ago? I was on the side of the road, my car had broken down, and I was late for a flight. You stopped, you offered me a ride, and you wouldn't even let me pay you. My mind flashed back to that day. A man on the side of the road, a kind face, a quick conversation. I had forgotten all about it. I asked, "Was that you?" A wave of disbelief washing over me. "Yes," he said. "My car had a flat. I was on my way to catch a private jet and I was stranded. You saved me, and you did it out of the kindness of your heart. That's the kind of person you are, Margaret. And the kind of person David is? Well, that's a different story. And my son wants to help you tell it." I looked at Ashley, and she just shook her head, a slow smile spreading across her face. "You see, Margaret, I told you your kindness would come back to you." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Robert's son, a man named Michael, set up a meeting with me. He wanted to do an entire documentary on my story, a full-length feature film about my life, about David, about the betrayal, and about the power of community. He said my story was a powerful human one that needed to be told. The money, the fame, none of it mattered to me. What mattered was the message. What mattered was showing David and the world that you can't get away with treating people like they're nothing. As we were preparing for the documentary, I got another call from David. His voice was no longer filled with anger or panic. It was filled with a chilling coldness. "I know what you're doing, Mom," he said. "I know about the documentary, and I'm warning you. If you go through with this, I will sue you for every last penny you have. I will make sure you lose your home. I will make sure you have nothing left." I just smiled. "David, you're a lawyer. You know that's an empty threat. You know I'm telling the truth. You know you have no case. You're just trying to scare me, and it's not going to work. I'm not a scared little old lady anymore. I'm a mother who has nothing to lose, and I'm going to make sure that everyone knows what you did. You can't run from the truth forever." I hung up the phone, and I knew in that moment that I had won. He could threaten me, he could try to intimidate me, but he couldn't stop the truth from coming out. He had left me on the side of the road, but he had no idea that I had just hitched a ride with a billionaire, and now I was going to make sure that he paid the price for his cruelty. The final act was about to begin.
The final act was about to begin, and I was no longer a timid old woman who was afraid of a fight. The documentary, masterfully produced by Michael, Robert's son, was a masterpiece of raw emotion and storytelling. It didn't just tell my story, it wove together the stories of other people who had been similarly betrayed by their own families. It was a powerful, humanizing look at a problem that so many people faced in silence. The film premiered at a major film festival, and the reviews were a resounding testament to its power. The critics called it a gut-wrenching, powerful indictment of a generation of ungrateful children and a must-see film for anyone who has ever felt invisible. My face, once so ordinary, was now on every major news outlet, every social media feed, every television screen. David and Sarah, once the golden couple, were now a national punchline. His law firm, in a desperate attempt to save face, had officially fired him. Sarah's socialite friends had all but disowned her, and her social media accounts, once a source of envy for so many, were a ghost town. They had lost everything they had built their lives on, their careers, their social status, their carefully constructed image of perfection, and they had no one to blame but themselves. The phone calls from David stopped. I didn't hear from him for a week, and I thought for a moment that he had finally given up. But I was wrong. He showed up on my doorstep one evening, a pathetic figure standing in the rain. He was no longer the arrogant, well-dressed lawyer. He was just a man, his expensive suit rumpled, his hair a mess, and his eyes filled with a desperate, hollow look. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long, long time, I saw my son. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking with emotion, "please, you have to help me. I have nothing left." I just looked at him, my heart a complex mixture of pity and resentment. "You have nothing left, David? You had a career, a beautiful wife, a fancy house, a life that 1,000,000 people would kill for, and you threw it all away. You threw it all away for what? Because you didn't want to drive me home? Because you thought I was beneath you?" He looked at the ground, a single tear rolling down his cheek. I don't know, Mom. I was just so caught up in it all. The pressure, the image. I thought I had to be perfect. I thought you would understand." "Understand what? That you were a coward? That you were willing to sacrifice your own mother for a silly gala and a new car?" "No, David, I don't understand, and I don't think I ever will." He looked at me, his eyes now filled with a genuine, profound sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." I just shook my head. "Sorry doesn't fix it, David. Sorry doesn't erase the hurt. Sorry doesn't bring back the years you lost by treating me like I was invisible. I can't help you. You have to help yourself. You have to figure out who you are, what you stand for, and what's really important in this life. And it's not a car, or a career, or a fancy house. It's family. It's love. It's the people who would do anything for you no matter what." He stood there for a long moment, the rain washing over him, and then he turned and walked away. I watched him go, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a profound sense of emptiness. The boy I raised was gone, replaced by a man I no longer recognized. I went back inside, closed the door, and locked it. The final chapter of my story was about to be written, and it wasn't going to be a happy one. It was going to be one of profound loss and a chilling victory. But what David didn't know is that my story, the one he tried to erase, had already reached its end. And the twist, the most shocking part of it all, that was still to come. He thought this was the end, but the truth was his real punishment was just beginning. And what I did next, what I revealed in the final moments of my film, would make him wish he had never been born. The final act of the documentary was a powerful and emotional one. I sat in my garden, the sun setting behind me, and I looked straight into the camera. My voice was no longer filled with anger or resentment. It was filled with a quiet, profound sadness. I talked about David, not as a monster, but as a boy who had lost his way. I talked about the dangers of a life lived for appearances, of a life where a person's worth is measured in money and social status. I talked about the importance of family, of love, of kindness. I ended the film with a simple message. A mother's love is a powerful thing. It can be a shelter from the storm, a beacon of hope in the darkest of nights. But if you take it for granted, if you trample on it, you will find yourself in a storm you can't weather. The film was a massive success. It was nominated for a number of awards, and I was invited to speak at conferences and events all over the country. I was no longer just Margaret, a simple old woman from a small town. I was Margaret, the face of a movement. But the fame, the money, the accolades, they all felt hollow. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. My son, the boy I had loved more than life itself, was gone.
Our relationship was a casualty of his own greed and pride, and that was a price I wasn't sure I was willing to pay. But the final twist, the one that would forever change my life and David's, was yet to come. I was at my house one afternoon, a few months after the film's release, when a lawyer showed up at my door. He was a young man, a nervous energy radiating from him, and he was carrying a thick folder. "Are you Margaret?" he asked. I nodded, and he handed me the folder. "I'm a lawyer for Robert Peterson," he said. "Mr. Peterson wanted you to have this." I opened the folder, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside was a single piece of paper, a deed to my house. I looked at the lawyer, confused. "I don't understand," I said. "This is my house. I own it." "Not anymore," he said, a gentle smile on his face. "Mr. Peterson bought it. He wanted to make sure you would always have a place to live, a place that no one, not even your own son, could ever take away from you. He also set up a trust fund for you, a very large one. He wanted to thank you for your kindness, for your honesty, and for the powerful message you sent to the world. He wanted you to know that you are not alone, and that your good deed did not go unnoticed." I looked at the deed and then at the lawyer, tears now streaming down my face. My son had tried to take my home, my sanctuary, and a man I had met for a few minutes on the side of the road had given me a new one, a deed that was in my name, a trust fund that would ensure I would never have to worry about money again. It was a powerful, beautiful, and completely unexpected act of kindness. My son had left me on the side of the road like a stray dog, but a man I had picked up had given me a new life, a new home, and a new sense of hope. The story had come full circle, but with a twist that no one could have ever predicted. My son had lost everything, and I had gained everything. The final moral of the story was simple. Kindness, even the smallest act, can come back to you in the most unexpected ways. But cruelty, even the smallest act, can cost you everything. And my son, he had learned that lesson the hard way.